Well, God is on the throne. He's looking down upon us. He's doing things for us we have no idea. He sends people across our pathway that we don't realize. And He works in such a providential way. When we get to heaven and we look back and we realize how God's hand was upon our lives, we will be so amazed. It's precious how God works in our lives, every day of our lives.
Now, Papa, you turned 88 years old just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we don't know how many more opportunities we're going to have together in this life. But we want to make the most of every opportunity, and that's actually one of the reasons why we're doing this video. We're hoping we can touch as many people as we can with this. You've often expressed how grateful you are for the people that you served with and for during your time in East Chicago. You were there for about 27 years. So it's very understandable that you developed many very close friends, very dear friends during that time. You know, Kim and I were visiting Dan the other day in the Milwaukee area, and we were hurrying out to catch our flight, and we ran into Carl Himmel and his daughter Karen and his son Brian. And I hadn't seen them for at least 3 decades. And yet we recognized one another right away. We had a delightful conversation. Although it was a little hurried, it was just so delightful to see them. You know, I remember that Carl served on the board for many years at the church, served faithfully.
Yes.
I know you depended on him for many things during those years at East Chicago. And his wife, Norma, was your secretary for many, many years.
Oh, what a blessing they have been.
Yeah. Their faithfulness and their kindness will always be remembered. Do you remember the Holyfields and how much you relied on them during that period?
Yes, it was providential also. Not knew what God had in store for us.
Yeah.
We became so closely attached to one another in friendship. God had a plan. Oh, my. They didn't realize it at that time, but I didn't either.
Charles did a lot of the music directing, a lot of the special music. He did a lot of the preaching. It was a tremendous help to my dad through all those years. Peggy taught various Sunday school classes and directed the Easter programs and Christmas programs for many years. We really appreciate their faithfulness more than words can say. Remember Bobby and Betty, they directed the youth group for many years. And Bobby and Betty have gone on to other ministries as well, including a prison ministry.
Were you that night when I talked about him behind the pulpit and prayed for him?
I remember. Why don't you tell me some of the details? I don't remember all the details.
See if I can remember. I was behind the pulpit and just getting ready to start a service. I says, folks, I can't start this service. I'm impressed with someone in this audience that's not feeling well, that needs prayer. And I'd like to pray for you right now. Is there someone here? And Bob Holyfield lifted up his hand and he came forward and he says, I've got a splitting headache. And I says, well, let's anoint you with oil. And I anointed him with oil and prayed for him. And he was instantly healed. He didn't say anything to me until he went back to his chair. And he wouldn't sit down. He says, Pastor Marrone, he says, you know, the Lord touched my body. I can't feel comfortable just sitting down. My headache is completely gone. And I want to thank God and thank you for praying for me. And he says something else. God has called me into the ministry tonight. I know I'm supposed to preach the gospel. And that's where his ministry started. What a blessing he was. I forgot all about that.
That was quite a word of knowledge you had. But there was other times you had a word of knowledge. I remember there was a time before Charles Holyfield had ever preached any sermons. You went up to him one night because you felt like you wanted to ask him whether he would be willing to preach at the next service.
And that same service it was.
Oh, it was?
I didn't ask him if he wanted to preach that same service. But I said, listen, I'd like to have you preach the gospel sometime if you would be willing to do so. He says, you know, God just gave me a message And he was willing to preach it, and he preached a beautiful message. First one he preached there. Oh, the Holyfields were a blessing, though. Oh, boy. You never met a more blessed family in the church, and they just blessed everybody.
I'm going to mention some names here that I can still remember, and I want you to say whatever comes to your mind. The Bests. Remember Burl Best?
Oh, Brother Best was such a blessing to me. I was supposed to go to Springfield, Missouri for a business meeting that involved my ministry. And he came up to me one day and he says, "Listen, Brother Marrone, I want to help you with your expenses." And so he gave me all the expenses I needed and gave me his car. Just take my car and enjoy it. My car wasn't in good shape anyway. So I never forget Brother Best. Every day that I pray for him, I think of that.
Olin and Geneva Sills.
Oh, yes.
You still talk to Tim, I think, once in a while, don't you?
Well, I haven't talked to him for several months now, but he calls me once in a while.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the Sills family has been a great blessing to us.
Yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed my ministry 27 years. Marvelous things have happened during those years. Someone told me years ago I should have written a book. I never did. I'm sorry. No, I can't remember all the details. But I was blessed. Oh, I was so blessed.
I remember Olin was my Sunday school teacher for many years.
Yeah.
And I think that his job would have been a lot easier if I was not going to church at the time. But I thank God that he was patient enough with me and was forgiving enough to allow me to continue to come, and very grateful for his faithfulness, in spite of me being the rascal that I was at the time. They're very precious people.
Yes.
And, really appreciate you taking time.
Quite a prayer list over here.
Yes. Really appreciate you taking time to share your heart with us about these folks.